All right, hello everybody. Today, I know I'm not in the classroom, and that's because I have a doctor's appointment. So that is why you guys will be reading the next story in our book, How They Croaked. Today's story is about the famous Christopher Columbus. So follow along as I begin reading. Death by Dirt. Explorer, born in Genoa, Italy, between August and October of the year 1451. Died in Valladolid, Spain, on May 20th, 1506, at the age of 54 years old. At sea, Christopher Columbus had the magic touch, but on land, not so much. All he talked about was his dream to head east to the Orient. But he wanted to sail west to get there. Not a smart idea. Most people already thought the world was roundish. But what about that upside down water on the other side? Why on earth would he want to search for land by sailing in the wrong direction, eating bad food, and sleeping all squished in a tiny cabin? Everybody thought Columbus had sprung a leak, but Columbus had determination, and he was just nutty enough to attempt the stupidest idea anyone had ever heard. People with big dreams don't care where they sleep. Columbus was born in Italy. He moved to Portugal, got married, had 2 sons, and tried to get the Portuguese royals there to bankroll his dream, but they said no. Columbus was so annoyed he moved to Spain. For 8 years, he pestered King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain to give him money to go exploring. Columbus had a plan. Everything he discovered would belong to Spain, but he would get 10% of all the gold and spices. The king and queen finally told Columbus to get off his knees and go find gold. In 1492, 100 men jammed into 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Columbus was 41 years old. Things like a telescope, sunglasses, brimmed hats, and potties aboard a ship hadn't even been invented yet. So they headed west into unmapped waters, short a bunch of basic stuff. Some thought the trip would take 3 years, but Columbus was better than anyone at the helm of a ship. He read the wind, stared at the sun, and squinted at the horizon for only 33 days before he spotted land. It wasn't the Orient, but it was land, and Columbus claimed it for Spain. He called it Hispaniola. The clothing optional natives he encountered had gold rings in their noses, a very good sign. Columbus sailed home. In Spain, the crazy Columbus was now a hero. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella let him lead a second voyage with 17 ships back to Hispaniola to drop off 1,500 men to start digging for gold. But Columbus felt loosely en route. He had diarrhea, which wasn't exactly a picnic at sea. Going to the bathroom aboard a ship meant hanging your butt off of a plank out over the water, then wiping with a piece of rope dangling nearby. Poop germs got on everybody's hands, and since they used their hands to eat, it created a perfect storm of infections. Exposure to damp, chilly air for months on end made Columbus's joints stiff, swollen, and so painful he couldn't even walk. He kept sailing around as best he could, but he couldn't find the Orient, and no one found any gold either. When Columbus sailed back to Spain, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were not happy with the news. Columbus got on his knees and he got out his knee pads again and begged for more time to find the Orient. But by now, it seemed like Columbus couldn't find anything. His eyes were bloody from strain and sun exposure. His sea legs were gone because the shipboard diet of salted beef, pickled sardines, and wine had given him gout, which made his feet swell. He was a shipwreck himself. In spite of this, Columbus got funding to go on more voyages. He found the New World by landing in Venezuela. But he couldn't see it or step foot on it himself because his vision was so blurry and spotted with dark blobs. And he was hunched over with arthritis. His hands looked like claws, and the sunlight aggravated his swollen, bleeding eyes. A cabin was built especially for him on the main deck because he could barely navigate his own body. The ship was basically a floating bed for Columbus. Even though Columbus was crippled and sailing blind, he and his crew found land at the site where the Panama Canal would be built centuries later. The Pacific Ocean was only 32 miles away on the other side of the land. Columbus would have liked that. The Pacific Ocean could take him to the Orient, but it was too late. As if things weren't bad enough, Columbus caught malaria, which was a disease spread by mosquitoes. He had chills, a fever, and difficulty breathing. His navigational antennae were all but broken, causing him and his crew to get shipwrecked in Jamaica. It took a year before one of the men safely canoed to Hispaniola and arranged a rescue. Almost dead, Columbus barely made it back to Spain. He moved into a monastery where he was taken care of by friars who couldn't refuse anyone, even crazy sailors. Columbus worked on the plans for his next voyage, but that would be just a dream. Columbus died on May 20th, 1506. He was 54 years old. No one came to his funeral. He didn't get mentioned in the newspaper, and Queen Isabella was dead, and King Ferdinand had no intention of paying Columbus's 10% to his family, so no one was allowed to even say Columbus's name. His family eventually sold off all of his maps and letters. Columbus wasn't given credit for finding the New World. Amerigo Vespucci was a passenger on the trip to the New World in 1499. He wrote a book claiming that he discovered it, which was a big fat lie. A map maker read his book and named the New World America after Amerigo. The name stuck like glue. At least the map maker didn't name it Vespuccia. History forgot about Columbus for 300 years. In the 1800s, the King of Spain took Columbus's logbooks out of the royal archives, and Columbus finally got credit for finding the New World. Over the years, Columbus's remains took a few voyages too. First, he was buried in Spain. Then, records show that his family took his remains to Hispaniola, the island that today holds the countries of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Years later, his body was taken to Cuba. These countries all claim to have Columbus's bones. By doing DNA tests on his bones, scientists confirmed that at least some of Columbus's actual remains are in Spain. But Cuba, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic declined to have their Columbus caches tested. Recently, doctors have concluded from Columbus's symptoms that he died of Reader syndrome. It's a rare disease people get from living in tight quarters where there is bad hygiene. a disease that some soldiers, sailors, and Marines still get today. It starts with dysentery and then attacks the eyes, joints, and urinary tract. If you have a dream and it's in your guts to do it, don't worry if there might be tight quarters, and don't take no for an answer. But don't forget the soap. So that is the end of how they croaked about Christopher Columbus. There's some extra information about him at the back here, a map of his legacy, and some, like I said, some extra information about how he died and some symptoms that he had, and other people, I guess right here, other people who died of the same symptoms as well. As of this point, you should be moving on to your questions and your mini project at the end. Once you are done, you can turn it in for full credit. All right, guys, I will see you on Monday. Do not forget that you have a no red ink test on Monday on capitalization. Have a good weekend. Bye.